Shell shock. Many were victims of it, but what really was it? Cowardice or something far more complex? That question is what we will be answering today. Shell shock first began to appear in late 1914. The name itself was coined in 1915 from an assumed connection between shell shock symptoms and the effects of the explosions of artillery shells. British soldiers and others fighting all around the world, but we will be focusing on the British for now, that served in World War I were starting to display strange behavior, such as walking erratically, developing strange tics like twitching limbs, and having problems with their balance. In the hospital, things were usually a bit better for the soldiers than while they were enlisted. They were given a bed, food, and medicine. They had physical work at times if their symptoms were physical, and social interaction with other patients if it was deemed safe, but it was commonly just with doctors. They could sometimes get jobs if their condition improved, but after total recovery they were commonly just sent back to the battlefield. At first, this was simply attributed to cowardice, which means being wrongfully afraid. The majority of the public believed that these soldiers were trying to get out of fighting the war. Much of the government also shared these views. In many places actually had some shell shock patients ridiculed, imprisoned, and even executed. Slightly more common, but still very cruel occurrence was that these soldiers stayed in the hospital for too short of a period of time to recover and were then sent back to war. However, there were real medical efforts being made. A psychologist named Charles S. Myers was hired by the British government to help with the growing problem of shell shock. Myers was hired to gather data about shell shock and formulate a response. Myers believed that soldiers were experiencing these strange symptoms because they were attempting to suppress the memories of the traumatic things they experienced in the war. He believed that through recovering the soldier's memory, the condition could be undone. However, this was not an easy task, as many soldiers would very much not want to remember being stuck in tight, muddy trenches, and then, when on an offensive, being told to run straight for enemy lines, despite both sides having heavy machine guns that could easily mow through them, and not to mention actually having to kill people. Unfortunately, Myers was ridiculed by those who still refused to believe shell shock was a real condition. Myers became quite demoralized, and after the war, he refused to cooperate in attempts to learn more about shell shock until the 1940s. Though shell shock stopped being as severe due to better treatment a while ago, now the closest issue being the larger classification of PTSD, we can still learn from this case. Mental conditions are very much real, and so are their massive repercussions.